So hi everyone, I actually started recording this video yesterday, and after recording a few of them I just found out that there's still a problem in my microphone, and thus I had to re-record everything because otherwise it was just the irritating sound all over again. So in this videos we are going to actually cover up a few of the things that you have asked about in yesterday's lecture regarding the processes and regarding the Linux way of doing multi-threading, and also partially how Windows does it. But as I told some of you after the lecture, I have never done concurrent programming on Windows, although I totally know that it's possible because most of the games just run on Windows, and games are among the most multi-threaded programs probably written on Earth, or at least some of them, of course. So let's start by basically taking a look at the Linux process abstraction. And as I repetitively said, Linux basically has a unique implementation of processes. It does not differentiate between threads and processes. All of them are called tasks, and the way that the only difference to Linux between a thread and a process is conceptually that threads in Linux can share memory versus processes which cannot share memory, basically. So the way that Linux implements threads and processes, both of them, is that they are called tasks. They are stored in special structures, special operating systems structure that we are going to take a look at today. And I'm basically using some flags, some configurations. You can basically change if this task can shares other memory, for example, with other tasks or not, and then that would be your thread. But if it doesn't, then this will be your process. Okay, and there are two abstractions that we need to understand here. The first one is the concept of a virtual processor, and the second is the concept of a virtual memory. We have actually touched upon both of them a little bit in the normal lectures. So threads share the virtual memory abstraction, and that is basically that all threads, well, they share them in two ways, basically. The first way is that if the threads are actually running such that they are supposed to share memory together, then they basically share the actual virtual memory together. But also, I mean, we have also talked a bit about how virtual memory is mapped into real memory using hardware in the second lecture, I believe. And that's basically also another shared abstraction. So all threads basically see the memory almost equally. You do not really have to point to memory address number 1 million, but rather to go in sequence as if you own the whole memory, basically. But each one of them receives its own virtual processor, and what we mean by virtual processor here is that the amount of time allocated to each thread to run to do whatever it is supposed to do. And when we talk about a program, we are not talking about the process that is running, but rather about the process and but rather about the process and all related resources. So a process is both the program and the related resources, so open files, address space, memory access, and so on. And everything, as I said, is called tasks, basically. So where do we find the task structures? We find them in /include/linux /sched.h, and this is where the task structure is. And all task structures form together a linked list, a doubly circular linked list that is called the task list. And you might want to remember what a circular doubly linked list is, but just basically either going back to your previous courses or going to your Wikipedia page. But anyway, so you have a circular doubly linked list that's called the task list or a task array. And it basically stores this structure: struct, task, struct. for each basically element in the linked list. And the task struct is basically what describes what a thread is. So each thread owns a task struct, and that task struct has, for example, the state of the thread. Is it runnable? Is it unrunnable? Is it stopped? Where's the stack of the thread? And things such as per process flags. So you might have some flags that we're going to talk about in a bit more details, but also some things that are related to scheduling. So for example, the priority of this thread when it comes to scheduling. Is it static priority, normal priority, and also what scheduling clause will it use. And this is actually, I mean, we cannot basically cover everything in this structure because, well, it's kind of long. It has 500 lines. You might want to go through them on your own. Some of them are very well described. Some of them are just like, well, you need to find out what they do. And you're not going to really, in real life, be changing a lot in the task struct, okay? And it is actually as a side effect of having 500 lines. I mean, that's the struct size. That's the amount of information that the struct stores, basically. You basically have 1.7 kilobytes for each task, or for each thread, or for each process running on Linux to just describe that task or that process or that thread. And that's on a 32-bit machine. So you can actually pretty easily calculate if you have an 8 gigabytes machine, for example, memory, in memory, basically, if you have 8 gigabytes of memory on your machine, by dividing the 8 gigabytes by 1.7 by the 1.7 kilobytes, that's the absolute maximum number of threads that you can store in your memory, right? But that's a completely theoretical number. It doesn't mean anything because you will break much faster than this, because your memory stores other things besides just the task struct of the threads. It stores the stack, the heap, and so on and so forth. But I mean, just if you have just empty threads, you can basically calculate the theoretical maximum number using that. And well, depending on your machine, you might even get blocked by the number of bits that you have in your registers, and we are going to talk about this in a bit more detail later in the course.